Now adjust the volume control so that the sound can be heard in all parts of the room.
This is the Protect Your Assets podcast.
Mr. Sandman.
You get the idea?
Bring me a dream.
It's on the internet.
Make him the cutest that I've ever seen.
Go on.
Give him two lips like
It's like no cheese I've ever tasted.
and tell him that his lonesome
Here's the
nights
Sandman.
are over, Sandman.
You love it. You know you do. Why else would you spend so much time with it? I'm talking about your favorite car. Or if you're fortunate enough, maybe you have a car collection. The truth is, while you're living, things can happen. Or when you die, decisions are going to have to be made about your car, your friend, that you might not agree with. Why would you want to leave that to chance? There's so much to know about this subject. In honor of Monterey Car Week, which we are underway right now. This is the Super Bowl for cars, after all. We're going to talk about your favorite car and some things you need to know about these expensive hobbies before it's too late. Good morning and welcome to Protect Your Assets. After all, that's what we talk about, is how to protect the things you work so hard for. I am David Hollander, your host. So good to be with you this morning. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you just joining me for the first time, welcome. You heard the jingle. People call me the Sandman, and that's because I help you sleep well at night by answering your most troubled tax, legal, or financial questions. And that's because I've been doing this for over 30 years. If you have a question, maybe something's been on your mind lately, you want to find out what I would think about it, I appreciate those emails. Send me an email to questions@pyaradio.com. Again, questions@pyaradio.com. So yeah, this week is Monterey Car Week, and they are expecting over $400 million. Think about that. $400 million in sales, and perhaps you're sitting on a valuable treasure that's worth quite a bit of money. And so we'll see these new cars roll out here at Monterey Car Week. Tomorrow is the Concours d'Elegance in Pebble Beach. I've been going to that since 1984. It's quite an event. And there's all kinds of new cars coming out, from the new McLarens to the new Cadillac. I don't know if you saw the new Cadillac Soleil, that convertible. It's beautiful. It looks like a Rolls Royce. It's an electronic vehicle. It's quite a beauty. And BMW's got an M5 Touring that's pretty cool. And, of course, Bugatti, all those $1 million cars are around there. So if you're in the Monterey area, maybe get down there and check it out. Now, let's get started. Well, this past week we saw some soft inflation and better economic data than what was expected. The Dow for the week was up 2.9%, S&P 500 up 3.9%, NASDAQ had a decent week, up 5.3%. The international index, MSCI, up 2.7%. 10-year Treasury down about 0.1%, still holding around 3.88%. And oil closed at $75.65 a barrel, down 1.5% for the week. And this was mainly driven to the fact that we had better economic data come out this week. So there was two themes that we saw. First, inflation continues to moderate. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, which measures inflation, and the Producer Price Index, PPI, both coming in softer than expected for the month of July. And then the economic data with retail sales and jobless claims, those were all better than forecasted as well. So the U.S. economy overall is doing fine. However, as we all know, the election's right around the corner, so that's certainly going to have some effect on what's going to happen, and we'll just see what happens. We've got a few months to go and probably have some more volatility, so just expect it. So let's turn to the subject, since it is Car Week, and we are excited about owning these cars, because these cars are just getting more and more and more expensive, particularly if you own some of the classics. And so let's talk about owning a car. If you have a will or a trust, realize that may not be enough when it comes to your car, particularly valuable ones. And that's because they present a special set of problems. And so if you don't deal with this effectively while you're living and when you die, then a fair share of your effort, your anxiety, expense, all these things, well, you're going to leave all that behind for someone to take care of. And if you just take a little bit of foreplanning, I'll call it, that doesn't have to be the case necessarily. So I'm not going to be able to cover everything this morning, but I'm surely going to go through quite a bit and hopefully educate you about this. And so I'd like you to think about a basic framework when you consider your car. And so, are your loved ones the ones that want to get your car? That's a good question, right? You may have a spouse, a child, maybe a grandchild, or another family member who shares the same passion for cars as you do. But more often than not, none of your heirs feel like you do about the car, and I get that, very much so. Even those who appreciate and admire your car, well, they might not feel that they have the knowledge or the experience to care for it or even store it, because that involves a whole nother set of problems. And cars also attract what we call a negative cash flow. Well, why is that? They cost money, sometimes real money, and they may be worth 2 or 3 times what you paid for it back then. But think about this, you're always putting money in them, whether it's changing tires, whether it's just getting service, whether it's cleaning it, caring for it. You got to store them. There's storage fees. Repair them. You got to insure them, of course. So here in California, particularly, it just takes money to own a car because the state wants their share every year as well. So if you leave it to somebody, whoever you leave that to is going to have to bear those costs. So keep that in mind. And it's important to have a conversation with that person who's going to receive it to see whether or not they would or could become the new steward for your car or cars, or whether they're just going to sell them off when the time comes. Whatever your decision is, it's really important that you make it known. So even when that person receives it, you want to make it easy for them to own and operate it as well. Now, what about when you're living? How should you own it? Because again, an asset is what a car is, and particularly if they get into certain types of values, you could have all kinds of other expenses and obligations that you're just not aware of until something happens. And so it's really important this morning that we talk about the subject, particularly because it is Monterey Car Week after all. Monterey Car Week 24, they're expecting over $400 million worth of sales over this weekend, and tomorrow is the Concours d'Elegance. So if you're thinking about getting out there and seeing what it's all about, then of course I encourage you to get over there and look at it. But if you have a car, maybe something's been sitting around, maybe you're going to inherit a car from somebody, then you're going to need to listen to today's show, because we're going to go through the things you want to know, whether you own one right now or whether you're going to be transferring it on to somebody else. It's really important you understand the documents that you should have in line and how you want to title and own it. Because if you're not prepared, something really bad could happen, and it could be really expensive. So stick with me. When I come back, we're going to get into that this morning. So great to have you here. We'll be right back.
Take the first step toward reaching your financial goals and get the information that can help you live a confident retirement. That first step is going to pyaevents.com and signing up for our next free event. That's pyaevents.com. Now back to Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, the Sandman.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Protect Your Assets. I am David Hollander, also known as the Sandman. And that's because I help my listeners, people just like you, sleep well at night by answering your most troubled tax, legal, or financial questions each week right here. And this week we are celebrating Car Week. I don't know if you've been down in Monterey, but it is Car Week 24. Monterey Car Week, that is, and they're expecting over $400 million. Think about that, $400 million of sales in cars over the course of this week, breaking some records that have happened in the past. There's some really exciting new cars that are out there, and if you happen to be in the area, try and get over the Concours d'Elegance tomorrow. That's in Pebble Beach, and it's incredible. It's a beautiful show and really well laid out. And you can see the new Lamborghinis and the Bugattis, and I really like this new Cadillac. It's they call it the GM Cadillac because they're highlighting their EV ability. After all, they make EVs too, and this car is beautiful. It's a drop top, looks very much like an old Corniche very elegant with all the modern features of a EV car, and it's made right here in the U.S. So cool. Check it out. So we're talking about cars because these cars, particularly ones that are there, are over $150,000. And the question is, if you have a car that's over $150,000 or going up in value, maybe it's a collector item, maybe you're keeping it for a while. Well, what do you need to know? And that's a great question. So we're talking about that this morning because if you own one now and you want to continue to own it and you don't want bad things to happen, well, we're going to talk about that. And if you pass away, of course, and you want to keep it in your family or your estate, you don't want other bad things to happen. So let's talk about that. If the car is worth $150 or more, could get there, there's a couple things you need to know. So first of all, if you have a will is a good first start. And in the will, you're going to name somebody who's called the executor. This is different than a trustee of a trust, okay? It's a different person. Couldn't be the same person, but it could also be a different person. In this case, I'm talking about a will and the person you name as the executor. This executor or this person is responsible to dispose of your car or cars if you have multiple. How knowledgeable is this person about your car? If you were to say, well, not very, well, then you could name somebody else to be the executor for that specific asset. Let me give you an example. You could name, say, your oldest son or daughter, who could be the executor of the overall estate. But let's say your good friend Dave, who happens to be a car enthusiast, could be your special executor with the authority to deal only with that particular car, or in some cases, if you have multiple cars, the entire collection. Or you can say that the executor of your estate could consult with your buddy Dave or somebody else who's a specialist, because they're out there versed in the ins and outs of owning collectible cars, regarding the sale or the transfer of that car. And I would certainly recommend that someone who's knowledgeable in handling the sale of vehicles would not only increase the likelihood that your beneficiaries would get the fair market value of the car in the future, but also that the car is taken care of all up until the time it's ultimately sold. Because let's face it, cars are not simple to own. Have a conversation. This is important. I know a lot of people don't even think about this until it's too late, but I recommend you have a conversation with the person you want to designate as call it the automobile executor. And make sure that they understand what's involved in this particular car or cars, and that they want to do it. In addition, the role of being the executor, it's time consuming. So remember that. Think about all the time you spend with a car. Yeah, you love it. I know you do. And you want to hang out with it and be with it and touch it and drive it and smell it and all that. I get it. Believe me, I do. And you should consider maybe the person you're designating doesn't have the same enthusiasm as you do, but they're willing to take it on, and if they are, you're going to have to compensate them to do that, and it should be reasonable. And that just means what a person in similar shoes who gets paid a certain amount of money to do something would be paid. That's what reasonable really means. Not too much, not too little. Not too little. You heard me say that. Make sure you're organized. What do I mean by this? Well, make sure there's somebody who knows where your cars are. I heard you laugh. I know. But you and I know you may have a car at the shop or with a team, and your spouse or your kids, they have no idea about it, right? They don't know where it is, they don't know anything about it, and then all of a sudden you're not there, and now what? Then there's also spare parts, right? And records, paperwork that go with that car, receipts, restoration work, storage, all that sort of stuff, records, proof. Where is all that? All those records should be part of your estate plan. Now, what we do digitally is we have something called a vault. This is a encrypted, internet-based, connected to your entire financial world that you can drop documents in. So, for instance, if you have a super nice 72 Porsche RS, you could keep all documentation, title, everything in this vault under that particular automobile. And then if someone needed to find it, well, it would all be right there, easy for them to pull down and look at and pass on to either the next collector or owner. Now, remember this in California. This is very important. Depends which county you live in, but this generally in California is the rule. If your car is worth right now more than $150,000, or it could go over $150,000 later when you pass, think about probate, because that car could end up in probate when you pass away, because the car, which is an asset, becomes part of your personal estate. And in order to pass it on to somebody else, change the title, in other words, it has to go through probate to give it to the new owner. Even if you have a will, the car will still have to go through probate. Probate is expensive. It's time consuming. In California, it can take up to 3 years. In fact, I just had a client who had been going through probate, not with us, with somebody else, 8 years. 8 years, the longest I've ever heard, still going through probate. So it can take an awful long time to transfer that title to the new owner. And of course, once it is in probate, anybody out there can challenge it and say, well, I'm the one who's supposed to get that car. Think about that. So the administrative burden alone could be overwhelming, and whoever's going to do this should understand exactly what they're getting into, because you don't want to create a bunch of stress, anxiety around this time when when the vehicle is transferring, particularly because vehicles are movable, right? They're easy to move around. If they don't get storage bills paid, etc., creditors could seize them. What if you were to get in an accident while you own it? Well, then all your other assets are subject to collection, particularly if that car is in your name. So there are ways to own cars, particularly ones that are valuable, particularly ones that you might keep in your estate for some time. And so that's why I definitely recommend that you really, if you're going to own these expensive cars or multiple cars, that you think about it, that you have a plan with how you're going to own that car, and you make sure that that you stick to it, and you make sure that the person who's going to accept it and step into that role knows what they're doing, because if they don't, you can be looking for a whole bunch of trouble. So that's why today we're talking about cars, we're talking about the value of these assets and things you need to know here in California if you're going to be passing these assets on to people in your family. All right, so we've covered the executor, we've covered having a will, we've covered owning it in your name, and so now we're going to talk about some other alternatives to own and manage these cars while you're living, and then ultimately when you pass away, what are some choices that you might want to think about, and how might you approach this, again, if you're going to hang on to the car. Because as we know, that's why it's important to watch the auctions and see what's going on at Monterey Car Week, for instance. Some of these old cars that were literally thousands of dollars years ago when you bought them are now trading for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. It's incredible. These cars have gone up exponentially in value since COVID, and there's a number of reasons for that. One is some of these cars have limited numbers of production. So Porsche, for instance, which I happen to love, Porsches are nice cars, but there's special Porsches. There's Porsches that are the older, I'll call them older because the new ones, even though they're nice, the new ones aren't numbered. The old ones, they're not that old. We're talking still in the 2000s. Some of these cars are numbered where they had very low production, so 50 and under. Those types of cars, because there's only a limited amount of them, as long as they're taken care of and they're stored properly, they're going to have a lot of value in the future. They have a lot of value now, but people are realizing this now, and as time goes on, they're going to continue to escalate in value because there's only so much of them. And as the push continues to go to electronic vehicles, you're going to have less combustible engines over time, especially in the future. And so the cars that were the classics, the unique ones, well, those should continue to go up in value, even more so when there's just a limited supply left. It's all supply demand. It's all market factors. That's what we're talking about. So, supply demand drives the price of a car. And some of these cars, you'll see them trade here at these auctions, and it's unbelievable. You just can't even believe how much this car is selling for. Some of these Ferraris that are, and Porsches, McLarens, you name it, all these types of cars that are unique, that are special, are trading for a lot of money these days. And so it's really important to understand, not only the liability you have, but the responsibility and how you're passing this on to somebody if you're going to keep it instead of sell it before it's too late, okay? And so what we're going to do in this next segment is we're going to talk about what they say. And I've heard this a lot. I've heard them say, and a lot of people say, that you should own a car in your trust. In fact, I see this quite a bit. On the title, it'll say your living trust owns the car. And that may or may not be a good idea. And so when I come back, we're going to talk about where they say owning a car in trust might be a good idea. And I'm going to say, well, we'll see. We're going to talk about it. Remember this, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. You are listening to the Sandman on the Protect Your Assets show. We'll be right back.
Take the first step toward reaching your financial goals and get the information that can help you live a confident retirement. That first step is going to PYAevents.com and signing up for our next free event. That's PYAevents.com. Now back to Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, the Sandman.
I know how he feels. Welcome back to Protect Your Assets. I'm David Hollander, also known as the Sandman. That's because I help you sleep well at night by answering your most troubled tax, legal, and financial questions each week. And if you just tuned in this morning, well, it is Car Week in Monterey, Car Week 24, and this is the Super Bowl for cars. Tomorrow will be the Concours d'Elegance in Pebble Beach, and they've got all kinds of new cars they're unveiling, like the new BMW M5 Touring wagon, which is a pretty cool car, the Bugatti, and of course that GM Cadillac Soleil, which is just a beauty. So if you're in the Monterey area, you should definitely stop by and see what these classics and new cars are selling for, because they're predicting over $400 million, that's right, in sales this year. So that got us thinking about, well, if you own a car or you're going to pass one on in your estate, you really enjoy driving it, taking care of it. Well, what do you do with it? How do you own it? What should you do? It's all really good questions. And so this morning we are talking about that. So if you just tuned in, it is now time for one of our fan favorite parts of our show, our They Say segment, where we debunk common myths, half-truths, and sometimes just bad advice that they say.
Who are they? What do they know that I don't? And what are they saying this week? Here's David Hollander, the Sandman's answer.
All I know is that I don't know.
All right, so here's one they say. They say, and I've heard a lot of them say this, that you should own your car, particularly a valuable car, in your trust. Is that a really good idea? Well, I hate to be an attorney on this one, but it really depends. It depends. And it depends because, think about this, if you own your car in your trust, well, sure, it'll avoid probate, and that's great, particularly if it's worth over $150,000. We were talking about this in the last segment, where if you missed it, go check our podcast out, Protect Your Assets, where you get your favorite podcast. But as I was talking about, if you have a car worth over $150,000, you die, it'll have to go to probate, because you have a title on your car. It's a physical asset, and that title will have to be changed to the new owner as provided in the will, and so that has to happen in court. If you have the car in a trust, which again they say, I've heard this quite a bit, that's a good idea, particularly if you want to avoid probate. Well, okay, just put the name of the car in your trust and it's done. But is it? Is it that easy? I don't know. Of course it avoids the hassle of probate, but consider the issue of liability while you're still alive. Realize that a car in your name or in a revocable, what type of trust do you have? I bet it's a revocable living trust, and revocable trusts are subject to, that's right, creditors and accidents that the car is involved in, whether you're driving it or not. So this could open your other assets up to a lawsuit that could get expensive while you're still alive. Owning vehicles in a trust is not much better than owning it outright in your name. So you have the same rights and responsibilities if you own it in your name as if you own it in a trust. And if that trust is revocable, that's why it spills over to your other assets. So look at the certificate. Remember the pink slips we used to get, and now they're green and multicolored. But go take a look at that title, that ownership document, and see what it says. Does it say your name? Does it say your trust? Does it say joint tenancy with somebody else? Take a look at that. It's very important. The trustee will be the person who will have the power to sell that car if something happens to you. They'll be the person who could register it, all that. And that's what a trust is decent about. They could borrow against it if they had to. They could certainly sell it as part of your estate administration if something were to happen to you. But again, what's super important is the liability. So you might want to think about this. It might be important to set up some sort of a business, maybe an LLC. Here in California, LLCs are excellent when it comes to creditor protection. You can also isolate that asset in an LLC where anything that happened with that car would be limited to the liability of that corporation that owns it. And so we call this purpose-based LLCs. And it might make a lot of sense to take this nice car or cars that you have and stick them in the LLCs where you happen to be the managing member. Think about that. Putting a car in a trust also does not change any income tax owed on that car if it's sold while you're living. The assets are treated as your own for income tax purposes. So you're going to pay the tax on the sale, and because the trust usually is revocable, you can tear up the trust anytime you want and have the property retitled in your individual name if you wanted to, say, later on. You also have the right to change, amend, revoke, or terminate that trust, and that's why the taxes follow that liability. Trusts typically that are revocable, they're not complicated to draw up. And when it does come to your special car, some thoughts should be injected in the document, particularly as it comes around taking care of it and storing it and how it should be maintained and things like that. Should you sell it now? Well, some collectors, as they get on in years, begin to wind down the vehicles that they own. The advantage of selling it while you're still around, well, you know all about it. You have a lot of knowledge in your head that is not necessarily written down somewhere. And so you know the history, you know the restoration specifics. These can be lost when you're not here anymore. Others don't know, and when you pass away, usually that information goes with you about that particular car that brought you so much joy. For cars that have appreciated significantly, remember there are capital gain tax considerations that may make it advantageous to pass that on as part of your estate, meaning when you pass away and you let the heirs do the selling for you. Because if you sell a car that has appreciated, the difference between the selling price and the price that you paid for it, less any restoration costs, is subject to a federal capital gain tax of 20%. And the state of California right now has a 14.4% tax that just came into effect this year in 24 if it's over $1 million. And then you add to that the 3.8% Medicare tax, so you're looking at almost 40% in taxes. So a collector who bought a Lamborghini Miura 30 years ago for, say, $100,000 and sells it for $950,000 has an $850,000 gain if they do it while they're alive, if they sold it now. But if that Miura passes through the estate, again, maybe through an LLC or through a trust, to a fortunate heir, well, then that collector, the heir who receives it, their cost basis is not the $100,000 that you paid for it. Instead, the appraised value at the time of your death is what the new basis becomes. So if the Miura was appraised for $950,000 and the heir goes ahead and sells it at an auction at Pebble Beach, they're going to owe capital gain tax only if the car is sold for more after all the deductions for commissions, etc., above the $950,000. In other words, that $850,000 capital gain is stepped up and not taxed to your beneficiary. And that is, of course, a wonderful thing. Now, I have written a guide about everything I'm talking about this morning. If you want to get your hands on this, I have it ready to go right now in a PDF format. where we can email it to you right now. My guys are sitting there right now answering the phone. If you want to get a copy of this, what do you do with your cars? How should you think about it? Call us right now. Call 866-PROTECT. Again, the number to call right now. Get your free car guide. What do you do with your cars? 866-PROTECT. If the lines are busy, I see a couple cars there coming in right now. We're going to be put you on hold for a second. Just hold on. They'll get with you. The number again, 866-PROTECT. Now, coming up next, the tax man is coming when it comes to your cars. So what do you need to know? What are some things you can do right now to minimize those taxes? We will be right back.
If you missed any of Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, all you have to do is go to pyaradio.com where you can download or listen to our latest shows for free. Just go to pyaradio.com on your computer or mobile device when it's most convenient for you. That's pyaradio.com. Now, back to Protect Your Assets with David Hollander, the Sandman.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Protect Your Assets. I am David Hollander, also known as the Sandman, and that's because I help you sleep well at night by answering your most troubled tax, legal, and financial questions. And when it comes to cars, it is Monterey Car Week 24, the Super Bowl for cars, and we're seeing some beautiful cars this week and weekend as the Concours d'Elegance will open up tomorrow and highlight some incredible vehicles from the past and the future, and millions of dollars of sales are occurring. And so you've been asking questions. What should I do with my car that's getting so valuable? Great questions. And so today we've been covering that. If you missed any of this important topic that I've been talking about today, just maybe wondering what you would do with this car, go listen to our podcast. This particular show will be posted by Tuesday, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Just type in the search glass, Protect Your Assets Cars, and you'll find the show. And you'll learn all the things we've been talking about this morning, whether you should have a will, a trust, maybe an LLC, all things to think about, particularly if you're running around in these cars, because some of them are a lot of fun to drive. Anyway, so this morning we've been talking about these cars, and some of them have gone up in value quite a bit. And so I'll call this section the Tax Man Cometh. So as of the writing of this show today, the collectors, most folks don't have to worry about estate tax. This was a tax that will be levied on things that you own, because under the current law, estates valued at $13.2 million or less are not subject to that 40%. You heard me right. 40% estate tax. That's in addition to capital gain tax and any other income taxes that could be owed. Now, if you're married, that is doubled, and it is indexed to inflation. Now, also know this, in 2025, at the end of 2025, the exemption that I'm talking about sunsets and falls back to what it was before the 2018 tax law passed. Also, if you happen to live in other states outside of California, or the car's registered in states outside of California, some states levy estate tax on the car when it's sold or when it's transferred to the new owners. The lowest exemption currently is Massachusetts, where an estate tax kicks in at, get this, $1 million or more of value. Note this also, that the $13.2 million estate tax exemption and the gift tax exemption is unified. Well, what does that mean? Well, if all or some of the gift tax exemption is used during your lifetime, that subtracts from the amount of estate tax that is available when you die. So it's another way right now that the estate tax threshold is lower for some taxpayers than others. If you make a gift from you, say to your spouse, that is tax-free. However, they're not subject to estate or gift tax when the spouse dies. So at that point, that's when these things are going to kick in, and you want to look at that, particularly if something were to happen to both of you, say in an accident, God forbid. For estates subject to tax at all, either state or federal, the estate's assets, the classic car, it has to be appraised, and the tax is due 9 months. 9 months after you pass, there needs to be a return filed or some kind of extension done. And that's when the tax needs to be paid. And if it's not paid, then you need to pay an estimate because there could be penalties and interest if you're wrong. So for those with substantial collections or other holdings who are going to be subject to the estate tax, there are strategies that you can use, of course, that's why you're listening this morning. And there's a small percentage of you out there who fall in this category, so listen up. Charitable donations. If your heirs are not interested in the collection, your kids don't really want it, well, you might decide to donate your cars to a charitable organization rather than selling them when you're gone. The rules surrounding charitable donations are different for cars donated during your life versus when you die. If you donate during your life and you want to take an income tax charitable deduction, the rules can be somewhat complicated. So I'm not going to get into that this morning, but it's something to consider. Donations made to a charitable organization at death will result in a federal estate tax deduction. Now, that also becomes a little bit particular. If you want the collection to stay together or that car to pass on, then you could set up your own charity. Well, what is that? It's like a private operating foundation, I'm going to call it. You can be on the foundation's board of directors while you're still alive, along with other people, say like your kids. That way, or your buddy Dave, that way you still retain control over the collection. There are two types of foundations. There's something called a private non-operating foundation and a private operating foundation. The difference between the two is important. A private non-operating foundation is one where the foundation merely writes checks to other charities. It does not itself engage in any type of charitable activity. If you set up a non-operating charitable foundation, the income tax deduction is limited to the cost basis of the cars, not their fair market value. An operating foundation is one that actually engages in charitable activity. And with your valuable car, that would typically be, say, like a museum when you think about something like that. So, all right, I know I threw a lot at you this morning. If that sounds complicated, you want to get started, well, we do have a guide this morning we're giving away where it highlights all the things I'm talking about, or you can read it in the comfort of your own home. We're happy to email that over to you right now. Give us a call right now because this is what we do. We help protect the things you love. Give us a call, 866-PROTECT. Again, my number, 866-PROTECT. Give us a call right now. We're happy to send this guide over to you. 866-PROTECT in honor of Car Week. I'd like to give a big thanks to the Protect Your Assets team today for putting together a great show in honor of Car Week. My executive producer and network manager, Kevin Renfer, and of course all my fabulous producers there answering the phones and just making things happen. Phil, Dylan, Adrian, and Lucas. Because without my team, I'm just another pretty voice on the radio. Thanks again, everybody. You have been listening to the Protect Your Assets show. I am David Hollander, the Sandman. Have a great weekend and go out and make the rest of your life the best of your life.
Investment advisory services are offered through Liberty Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. The strategies mentioned are not suitable for everyone. The information expressed does not consider your specific situation or objectives and may not be appropriate for all investors. Past performance is not indicative of future results. To better understand the risk associated with investing and how it reacts to different market conditions, listeners should always consult with their qualified investment professionals, financial advisors, legal or tax specialists, and conduct their due diligence before making any financial decisions or taking any action. The legal information provided on the air is not intended to substitute for callers hiring their lawyers to advise them about personal legal matters. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Liberty Group LLC paid for the following program, and the host's views and opinions do not represent those of the station or its ownership. California Life Agent number 048569. Persons engaging the services of one affiliate of Liberty Group LLC companies should be aware that each company is operated separately. You're listening to the Protect Your Assets Radio Network.